All right, guys, we are live. One Fun Guy podcast. Today, my guest is going to be Shena Collins. She is awesome. We have a great story to tell. She's a fantastic human being. But first, guys, today's episode is sponsored by the Clubhouse Inc. So if you like the hoodie I'm wearing or any of the other ones I've worn in the past, you can find that at www.shoptheclubhs.com. That's www.shoptheclubhs.com. Or you can hit Facebook and it's the Clubhouse Inc. and all this stuff is up there. So Shena, let's tell us a little bit about yourself first, and then we'll go into this awesome conversation I'm going to have with you.
All right. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me as a guest on your podcast. This is a great honor. I'm grateful to be here, share some of my story. I'm a cancer survivor and thriver. I'm an entrepreneur, a business owner. Right now, I'm transitioning from a brick and mortar store to who knows what, all online. I made it through the pandemic with the brick and mortar store, made it through a cancer journey, and now things have changed, and I am on to a new life adventure. I also, I have a podcast as well that I'm developing, Bantering, and I also do advocacy for folks with cancer, offer resources, and also offer my practical business experience that I've learned. Let's see, and I do some voiceover work, recording meditations. I'm working on recording a book for a gal, an audio recording. So kind of multifaceted in a lot of ways. I'm an entrepreneur and a creative soul.
That's awesome. So all that stuff aside, how are you feeling now? Are you good? Are we?
We're good. We're good. So my cancer is, I have a weird kind of cancer. I'm triple hormonal positive breast cancer. I had and have. So it's like I have cancer still, but I don't have any evidence of disease. So that's what my cancer is like. So technically I'm cancer free. I'm still in endocrine therapy. I take a pill every day to keep my cells from creating cancer. So, and I've been out of chemotherapy for 2 years now, and I'm learning how to live in this new adjusted body after multiple surgeries, multiple setbacks, hospitalizations. And boy, the hardest part was just kicking cancer's hiney. And now I'm finding on this end of things, it's the recovery part of it, and establishing a new normal and getting back to work is a very challenging path, and it's almost harder than it was going through, losing my hair and going through chemotherapy and immunotherapy and 8 surgeries and yeah.
All right. Well, I'm glad you're healthy now and you're on the mend and you're doing a recovery. You just had like such a unique presence about you. When I came across your page, we met in a Facebook podcasting group, and I was like, this person is intriguing. I'm going to learn more. So I did a little bit of stuff. Let's jump back to your business, right? How did you've always had a knack for collecting and the antiques and the vintage kind of stuff. How did that turn into a passion, into a business, into a successful one now? Start us on that journey.
Well, I have really good taste. And I owned a painting company for 18 years, and I did decorating and helped people pick out things. I decorated many homes. So my collecting really began with, number one, I have a love of old things. I'm just enamored with the past and history, and I really enjoy that. And especially when there's meaning, like if I have old windows that came out of a school that was closed, that had the story behind it. So I got into the collecting. And then I was living in Madison, Wisconsin, and then I ended up moving. I got married and moved to Westfield, Wisconsin, with my now ex-husband. I taught yoga. I volunteered. I taught yoga for seniors, things like that. I continued collecting. I had traveled for years and always perused small little shops like the one I have. And it ended up a gal in my yoga class owned a store here in Westfield, and she wanted to exit the business. And she said, if I just had somebody to hand over the keys to. And it rolled around in the back of my head. I've been a business owner before. I love this stuff. I had a wide collection of things that I'd been collecting that just stayed in boxes. So it was like the universe coming together.
Right. That's what it is.
And yeah, and then she basically just handed me the keys to the business, and I've been here. This will be would be my 6th year here in this location. So I'm right downtown, and yeah.
So we'll talk about the transition of possibly moving to another brick and mortar or going to all online. But when you started your collecting journey, that's something you obviously were passionate about. You turned it into a business. When did you kind of get that idea in your head when she said, hey, I wish I had? Did you have an idea of how you wanted to set your store up, or did you kind of just go with the flow, or did you have enough product to like put in the store? You'd have been collecting for a while. You accumulated some stuff. It grew from there. How did that kind of fit into place?
At first, I tried to go with the flow. I just tried to go with the flow. I tried to step in, take over her business model, and improve upon it. And then I realized quickly that I needed to make some changes if I was going to turn this into something that was functioning in the way that worked for doing business for me. I've never been one that really fits inside the box, and I've always been one to test the boundaries of putting the foot outside the box. So I really had an idea of how I wanted to set up the store, what I wanted to do. I had to go through and remove vendors from the store. The store is a consignment store, so there's a lot of different people that sell items in here. Some were happy with the change, some weren't. But I realized that literally, and I ended up in a small little space. So after my divorce, and I had a lot of things in storage. And all of those things I could fill the store with. And so that's actually what I ended up doing. The store started with my private collecting of things. I mean, it would even be things where I would be on a walk with a friend and we would see mirrors on the side of the road. And I'd be like, come on, let's lug these home. And she's like, for what? What are you going to do? And I'm like, I don't know yet. I just know something. So it was like the universe was preparing me for this. I always loved little shops like this. I always was like, oh, I could see myself owning one of these. And well, the opportunity presented itself and I jumped on it. Yeah.
Nice. So I'll put you on the spot a little bit. Give me kind of one of your like coolest items that you've ever come across, and then how you came across it, and like give us like 3 of your favorite kind of items that you like to collect.
The funnest, neatest item I've ever come across. Well, boy.
It doesn't have to be in your store now, just something that was like super.
Kind of funny that you mentioned that. I actually have this old toaster here that came across my radar. I was cleaning out a cabin, and it's really interesting. So, and I thought, oh wow, because I'll get calls to clean out things. You can see the toast goes in there, like. Oh boy, I have interesting stories of things I've found that I probably shouldn't share on here. I found a whole creepy doll collection. That was really crazy. And the one doll had these neon green eyes and no pupils. And a gal that worked with me, she and I played where we'd move the doll around the store for when the next person came in. It always creeped me out. But I did. I found this whole creepy doll collection, and they were really bizarre looking dolls. And I actually just sold the whole collection this last fall. So
that's awesome. So now, when you have the people obviously in the area where you at know that you have something, so they'll call you up and say, hey, listen, I have a grandmother who is moving out of her house, going somewhere else. Do you want to look through it? Do people kind of let you? I don't know if the proper word is rummage, but do they let you kind of go through and gather what you want and then you make an offer? Or is it something where it's just they give it to you, or how does that work?
Sometimes people will be like, I come take a look and pick. I don't want anything. I just want it out of my space. I'd rather support a local business than, drive to another town. My store is in a town of 1,227 people, and we rely heavily on tourism. I do the rummaging thing. I go into people's attics and look. You had asked what my 3 favorite things to collect are. Old photos. I love coming across old family photos. So many people will just get rid of them, throw them away, burn them. And I'm like, no, people really like these. They're fun. So I love collecting old photos. Original hand-painted artworks. It doesn't matter if the artist is famous. My favorite are the ones that it was the person that lived in the house 10 years ago painted. And that's always been something that I like to collect. And then a third thing, I have a thing for doilies. I don't know why. You know, they're kind of making a comeback.
They are.
Yeah.
So it's funny that you mentioned that, because my mom had an antique dining room set, and it was hard to find like lace doilies, like real lace doilies. A lot of them are like cotton and they make them look like it, but to find it is very hard. So I know the struggle there. She asked, she was like, can you try and find these? I was like, how am I supposed to look? And you just read a description of something, but you don't know, right? Like, how do you know if it's real lace or not? So I know exactly what you're talking about there. That's pretty awesome.
Let me tell you a secret. I've been hoarding all of them in boxes. I have a whole closet stacked full of homemade lace doilies.
That's funny.
Just ready to go online.
So let's talk about the transition now of, you said the brick and mortar might be something you're considering doing next into another brick and mortar or moving online. How have you kind of navigated through that? Is it value for property? Is it size? A little bit of both? Like, what's your next step now?
Wow. Well, the next step now is just getting moved out of this space. And I personally, I have a really strong commitment. I believe that in our rural communities, that small hometown family-run businesses, they're really the lifeblood of a small community such as Westfield. And we really need to foster and nurture that space. So it's really sad. So what's going on is the building, I just rent. I don't own property.
Okay.
So I don't own the building, but my building was purchased. And as we all know, everybody's going through increases and housing increases and prices, and everything's going up. Well, the same thing happened here. It was a very, very short-term lease, 6 months, that the new owners wanted me to sign. So I came to this conclusion that I had to do something. I had to move my business if I was going to continue to. So I am transitioning from a brick and mortar and looking into 3 different spaces. So one would be a build in a neighboring town. That's already, there's buildings there. It would be just building the inside out. Housing in another local business in another town over. Because right now, for real estate to purchase or to rent in Westfield, Wisconsin, where I live, when it comes to commercial, it's very, very limited. So, and coming off of the backside of a cancer journey right now, purchasing is not going to be an option. That's going to take more preparation and planning and recuperating and recovering from my medical journey. Yeah.
Okay. Well, no matter what happens, you're going to do great. I could tell for sure. It's going to be a fantastic journey.
We'll see. I'm excited. Like last night, a friend of mine stopped by and commented, "Why are you so happy?" And I'm like thinking, I've spent this time building this here at this location. It's been great. It's been fun, but it's not moving. It's a new adventure. And that's how I have to look at it. I mean, when you rent a commercial space, that's the risk that you run, is that you can lose your space, a lease can end, new people that purchase the building. And so that's what I encountered. And it just motivates me more to, actually own something, I guess, yeah. So,
all right.
Yeah.
So we'll circle back to the business stuff, but I met you on a podcasting page on Facebook. Tell us about the podcast. What do you want to have happen? Is it something that you're excited about, or is it just kind of like, give us your journey into the podcasting world?
Well, the podcast I am definitely very excited about, and it's something that I want to pursue further. I have all these dreams, like, that, oh my gosh, I'm looking for a podcast about being the best you. And my podcast started when I started going through my cancer journey. I needed something to do. My background is in communication arts. I have a degree, a bachelor's of arts in communication arts. But when I learned how to create and do video and things like this, we were using VHS tapes, cassette tapes. Like,
Right.
it wasn't all these great apps. So I had all these great communication skills. I have a big mouth. I'm obviously not afraid to talk to people or get in front of the camera, make a fool of myself. If you go to my Facebook page or YouTube, you'll see me on there crying, looking pretty, looking ugly, happy, the whole gamut of kind of like the human experience. And I loved podcasts. And so I was like, I could do this. So I started the Bantering Fool podcast it would have been late 2021.
Okay.
And I just have dabbled back and forth, back and forth. But ultimately, what it's about is working through obstacles, through the things that life throws us at us to be the best versions of ourselves. Every day, I think that we have an opportunity to, even if it's the worst day you've ever had, or you get a phone call that you have stage 3 cancer, that you can still find a way somehow to be the best version of yourself and the different paths. So ultimately my goal is to interview people. I'll have to have you on there as one of my first
Absolutely.
guests.
I'd love to.
and how they got to where they're going and living their best lives and what they love. I look back to a key group of people that I knew when I moved to Madison in the early 2000s. And we all talked about a lot of dreams. We talked about what we wanted to do. And here we are 20 years later. And what we said we wanted to do, what our dreams were, we got there through some really bizarre obstacles, through unfortunate circumstances, through also things in life that bring you joy, like, having a family, and like, wow, it's possible. And I just, that human interest connection of how you can mold a pile of I have to try to watch my language. I cuss like
No, you're fine. You're fine.
so how do you mold this pile of crap into, how do you polish this up and make it really great? And what kept you going through it when you felt like you wanted to give up, because those days are there. And so that's what I'd like to talk about, and talk about my experience, because I know it best, and then fall on my background of working with mindfulness, with pain management, with all of these things that I have learned through a really long medical journey, and just how it enhances and makes our lives better. So that's my goal. So the podcast is still floundering out there, but it's about talking about how we become the best versions of ourselves, what paths we take to it, and that there's no one set path. And hopefully it inspires other people to not give up on their dreams.
Yeah, it absolutely will. That, like I said, that's kind of how I had the basis for my podcast. I just like talking to people, and I always networked very well. And I was like, well, if I could have some of my friends on here, it would be great. We could talk shop and, tell our stories. And then it turned into meeting new people. And now my list of guests is extensive. So I'm super excited. I'm going to keep this going. So, but yeah, it's a great feeling though, right? When you start something that you can put your passion into and you just enjoy doing it. And that's kind of where, I'm at. I know you'll do great at it.
Oh, thanks. Yes, and people's individual stories are, people want to hear stories. They like the human interest. I wrote for our college's newspaper, and I always preferred to write the human interest stories. The cross country track star of the girls team. What was she about? Like that stuff was always fun to me. I enjoyed that. What was something behind a tradition. I mean, we are interested, and people have stories to share. And to build and bridge that connection through social media. We have this really great opportunity where we realize we're not alone. When there's people like you, when there's people like me, where we're willing to come on here and share intimate details of our lives with other people, share our lives with others, that keeps other people going. And I think that's really great and
Yeah, you're
important.
1,000% right. That's the way I feel too. And that's kind of how I've noticed that, like, before, like I said, I had a list of people that I wanted to be guests, but now the guests kind of just find me, right? I'll go onto a page and I'll see somebody and I'll reach out. And then the next thing you know, we just start a conversation and we're picking dates and times for, to be on my show. So it's a really neat process.
Yeah.
It's a cool kind of way to embrace this weird realm of social media, which isn't really, it's new, right? Like, social media has been around for a while, but podcasting is kind of the newer thing. So it's nice to see in this, space of people just talking and bringing back the art of conversation.
Yes. And it's so easy. I mean, literally, all you need is a phone. I mean, I remember our math teachers when I was in high school. We're like, why do we need, like, you're not going to be able to carry a calculator everywhere with you in your pocket. Now, guess what?
Right.
We carry a video production, we carry a computer, we carry a calculator, a telephone. All of that fits in our pockets.
Yeah.
And all you need is a phone to connect.
That is true. And that's how I started. Realistically, I had my phone, a tablet, and a desk, and that was pretty much how I started. And I kind of built my studio around me, but like, it was just a basic space, and that was kind of how I did it. So you'll do great. I could tell you have the knack for the art of the conversation, as they say. And I'm Italian, so I could talk forever, right? That's the gift of gab, is what everyone always says. So
when I was actually looking for work, not as going into my own field, when people would say, like, what do you do that you can do best? I'm like, as long as all I have to do is just run my mouth and not do any real work, I'm like, that's the best job for me. And they're like, where are you going to find that? Well,
right.
emceeing, reading books, sharing, podcasting. So absolutely.
All right. So let's go back into the business field now. So you have the building, you have the shop set up, you have all your stuff inside. Walk us through those first couple days and weeks of opening the door for the first time and actually having your own business.
Oh, it was it was so cool. I'd like the first night when I had the keys, I remember there was this rack of clothes in here I didn't like. And I came in and I just ran my arm down, and I was here by myself, and I just ran my arm down and knocked all the clothes off the pole. And I was like, yes. And so I started moving out items that didn't fit with the model of the store that I wanted. This place was really, really packed. And, I wanted that fun store that was antique, vintage. You get a pick through, but I wanted it more upscale and a little bit, that sun might be getting bad on my face. I think I picked a bad spot. It looked good earlier. And so I started making those changes. I had vendors in the store that I actually ended up, I had moved the vendors out of the store. And truthfully, taking over the business did not make me a very popular person for a while. Here I was in a small town. I'm coming in, I'm making all these changes, flipping everything upside down. And it was a really difficult process. But people held out with me. We made it through, and it turned into something really great and a destination spot for shopping. So many people from Madison that I know, I lived in Madison for years, come up here and shop. And so I like what I've built, and it's really sad to see it go. But those opening days, and then it was bringing in the stuff I had in storage, making new displays, showing, it was a year of so much fun. It was like playtime every day, and I got to decorate and be creative. Because of my former life, I owned a painting and decorating company, but this was like
Right.
cool. I was like selling the stuff and decorating and growing a shop and becoming part of a community and a business atmosphere, and I like that stuff. I was always rather involved, even when I had my painting business with networking groups and buy local groups in Dane County, in Madison, Wisconsin, when I had my painting business. So yeah.
Awesome. So now you've had a successful run. There's some changes you make. What do you envision next? What's your next? If you find a brick and mortar store, what's kind of your next goal? Because you're going to expand, you're going to grow. Now you have some years under your belt with experience. What do you think is going to be the next, way you're going to set up your shop?
I think the next way I am going to set up my shop is I would like to. I'd like to pull away from doing the consignment work. I whittled it down in the last few years of consignment that I was really particular about the consignment. So I had about a handful of people that just constantly filtered in stuff, filled the store. I like their taste. So what I'd like to do now is looking forward to opening another brick and mortar store. And I want to exit the role of being in the store all the time. When I first started the store here, I was not in here all the time. And I was out picking, I was out being in people's attics, cleaning out garages, finding the treasures. So I'd like to step more back into that role once I get everything designed and looking great. And yeah. Is that sun bad? I am sweating.
No,
It's hot in these front windows.
So obviously I'll mention the kind of elephant in the room, right? Everybody watches American Pickers, right? So you have Mike and Frank, and then Frank exits. Now you have Jersey John, you have Danny, you got a bunch of stuff. Has that kind of industry and them being in the forefront of like public, enjoyment for people watching pickers pick and do their work, has that helped you at all, like with their cause of people getting more into antiquing, more into vintage shopping, more into that style of where, most people go to a store and they buy something new versus what could be repurposed as considered vintage and now new again?
Absolutely. I would 150+% say that their show and what they do has influenced this industry, and especially in tourism areas, because we are a heavily toured area. Over 80% of the business done within my store is from tourism season. And with American Pickers, everybody's like, oh yeah, we watch them, and oh, this is so much fun. And they come in, they want to look for those treasures, they want to find all that stuff. It used to be Antique Roadshow, but when they originally started the show, they had a fun crew, a cast of characters, and that was a lot of fun. And now that I'm delving more into digital media and going to have more time, I think it would be fun to really chronicle the upstart, film the show, what we're doing, show people. I think you and I talked about this, and you generate so many great ideas. But yeah, and they're from Iowa, and I originally grew up in Iowa, so don't hold that against me.
No, not at all. So as you start to find items, when you start to make deals with people, right? How do you price certain things? Is there like the traditional, what we call value of something? Does sentimental issues go into that? Is it something that, like, how do you price items? I'm curious as to how you navigate that without giving too much of the secrets away.
Well, ultimately, I will look at something, and I would say for me, I follow my intuition a lot, and I'm usually pretty much spot on. I don't feel like I have to research absolutely everything and be like, oh my gosh. But my little tactic, what I do is I'll make a pile of stuff, or I'll go in, somebody says, clean out my attic. And I'll be like, okay, I wouldn't be doing my job if my first offer to you wasn't embarrassingly low. And so what I will do is I will come in and I will absolutely, really lowball it. And it's hard. It's especially difficult when it's sentimental items, something of a loved one that was valued, a precious collection. And at that point, then we open it up, or I will, each price individually. I'll go through. I have, once you do this long enough, you know what the prices are. You know what will sell for prices in your store. You have a general idea, and it just comes easier. But I typically, I typically head in and offer embarrassingly low prices, and then start the bargaining aspect from there. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's always the, when I watch the show, not to use the quote, but they always say that that's the biggest kind of, the most fun is the art of the negotiation, right? Where you start versus where you end up. And then on the flip side, when you have the item in your shop now and someone says, hey, you have this price for X amount of dollars, can I offer you this amount? And then you're doing it all over again on the back end of it.
Yes. And that took people a while to get used to. That is one major change that I made when I took over the store. Was there was no bargaining. You couldn't make an offer. What was on the price tag was the price tag. Um, and I like to bargain. I've always done it. My grandma was the garage sale queen. So this even started when I was little, and my grandmother was always looking for a deal and wheeling and dealing and talking and making offers. So it took people a little bit to catch on. And some people are comfortable with it, some aren't. If I can tell they're not, then I use my sales skills and I'm like, hey, my best price on that would be this, or hey, I'll sell that to you for $20. That's my first offer. You can offer me something else. So I kind of worked them into it. And then it started to be what attracted people to my store because I would bargain with them and they could come up and offer and I'd either say yes or I'd say no or counter offer. So yeah, it is a lot of fun. So I basically spend a lot of time running my mouth, wheeling and dealing, and I like it. It's fun.
That's awesome. So now, obviously, you're passionate about it. Let's say you're traveling, right? And you're in, let's say, Florida, and you come across an antique that you really like. Is it something that you try to buy and ship it back, or is it something you pass on? How does it work when you go around to other places and you're like, I'd love to have this in my shop. How do I get it there? Is that something that like you can, kind of navigate through, or is that?
Yes, actually, and I have done that before. I have found items I like, and then I ship them back. So I just send them through the mail, and then I also one of my consigners in the store. He actually travels like across the country, and he will bring things in. So that really helped. While I was recovering, from cancer and on treatments and all of that, that really super helped. But yes, I'll ship things back or I will head out with a trailer attached to the back of a truck because that's the only way to go. So go big or go home. And, and that's usually like, I don't have enough room, but if it's small things or a box of stuff, I'll ship it. But otherwise, we're going big. We're taking the trailer.
That's awesome. So you mentioned before about having a small community and a close-knit community. That's kind of I don't want to say not normal America, but that really is like normal America, right? Small businesses, small, tight communities, very rural communities, like those exist. And it's not all big city, big people. Having that small knit community that you've kind of discovered and embraced yourself in, moving on to the next chapter of whatever you decide to do, are you going to keep that mentality with you, or are you going to kind of like, okay, I did the small thing, maybe now I'm going to expand a little bit, or do you like the feel of the comfort of the small community, or do you want to try to get into a bigger market, or is it kind of like, is it something you've kind of weighed out, or is that?
Well, I have a really heavy interest in, I call it, and I don't even know if it's a real term or not, but rural urban revitalization. I think that it's really important to, these small downtowns are really the lifeblood, I believe, of small towns. And I would like to see, I grew up in a small town myself in Iowa. And at this point, and with my store here kind of closing, I'm like, maybe now I'll move back to Madison and, have my shops here and, drive back and forth. So I'm at a crossroads, which I don't know what to do.
Sure.
But I heavily support, and I grew up in a small rural farming community in Iowa, where I think that we need to keep the rural environments appealing to retain our young
Right.
people and young entrepreneurs and business people. Um, I would say that I don't want to tap into a large market. I don't want to try to open a shop in Madison and do this. I would prefer to branch out and open several little shops in different communities.
Because Madison is relatively big now, right? Like minus the university, it's grown in population over the past couple of years.
Oh, immensely huge.
Yeah.
Even, yes. And like areas where it used to be field and trees and I'd walk the dogs, there's apartment buildings and condominiums, just the urban sprawl.
Right.
And I lived north of there in Wanakee for a while. And at first when I moved to Wanakee, I thought, oh my gosh, really, I have to drive. It's going to take me 12 minutes to get into Madison. And now literally Madison and Wanakee they're just one. And, so it's huge. The urban sprawl is absolutely there.
Yes. And what they've done with the Capitol, right, is pretty crazy, right? Because when I was in school, the Capitol was just a building, right? There was nothing really around it. Now it's like a city within a city. I mean, it's amazing.
It is. Madison is a really great place. I like it. Living in a rural community, though, a lot of people are kind of anti the big city. So sometimes, but I'm flexible and,
sure.
Home is where you make it. I've traveled around a lot. I've lived a lot of different places. And there's something to say about a close-knit community like this. I really like it. I like the people. I'm really active in my church and I've been very involved in that. With our Chamber of Commerce, with events. I've tried to as much as I can. And I really like that. I like being involved in the small communities.
Yeah, there's just something to it, right? Because like obviously I grew up in the city. So my dad worked for the city of Chicago and we lived in a very urban area since I can remember, right? So it was I remember mini malls when they first started opening, like that was the big thing in Chicago. Everywhere that was residential area, they would knock it down, buy up 8 or 9 old houses, level it, and build a mini mall, a strip mall. And that was kind of the thing. And that was like super popular in the Chicago area because you always had the downtown with the skyscrapers in the city and the Gold Coast. That was always there. That was never changing. But like into the community of Chicago, a lot of it was just really based on industry, and it wasn't really property development. It was all what could you put in that could make money, and it was mini malls, restaurants, movie theaters, things like that. And that small town community I never knew what it was until now, where I live, in Illinois. Here, I'm in a small town, kind of more rural-ish urban community, but like it's great because now I embrace it. But like as a kid, I never knew what that was. Like we didn't have farms and open land. We lived in houses with gangways and alleys, and you were right next to your neighbors. So if I did something wrong as a kid and my mom started yelling at me, well, the 4 houses around us all knew that I was in trouble because the windows are open and she's screaming and and trying to scold me. And so I didn't have that like openness in space, and I do now. And I love it. And I don't know if I could go back to living in that kind of like environment where you're right on top of your neighbor and, they know everything about you because of where you live and what they could hear through the walls, basically.
Yeah. So yeah. That's very true. But the grapevine is long in a small rural community as well.
Yeah.
And I always, when I was young, I was dying to get out of a small town. I just couldn't wait to be out of there. It was my whole goal was leaving that place, leaving the small, I probably had some other choice words for it back then. and doing something else. And one of my mom's sisters always told me, she's like, Sheena, you're going to end up right back in a small town. At one point, we all come back to our roots. And I'm like, there's no way. I'm like, I'm going to end up in Chicago or New York. And now look at where I am right now.
Yeah. And it's funny too, right? Because I always watch those, Lifetime Christmas movies, right? Or all the ones
I
on
love
the,
them.
and it's always like, the big city guy, he always gets, kind of screwed in the long run, right? Because it's like she always goes back to the farm and meets them. I'm like, wait, let's make a movie where she moves to the city and the guy in the city makes $1 billion and she marries that guy with the Ferrari and the Lambo. Like, why does she always go back to the guy with the track, a tractor and a truck? Like, let her meet the guy in the city. Like, let them, embrace. Like, they make money too, right? That guy's a multimillionaire. What's she doing back here? So I always joke about it. I'm like, you always watch these, those crazy Hallmark movies, and it's like, well, what about the guy in the city? Like, he's doing something right too, They always make him out to be the bad guy. It's like,
that's right. So yeah, it's interesting. That's funny. I never thought of it that way, but it's always that consistent storyline, especially in the last, 5 years, the Christmas movies have been
right.
Successful career woman back in the small town. Yeah, I don't know. I like it here, but I have all sorts of options. I love my community. I love my involvement. Right now, finding another place to rent that's brick and mortar or purchasing a place is not in my cards. So we will see.
Right. So let me just ask this real quick, because you're in a unique business where you are more of your stuff is hands-on, right? So like, I wear a shirt, I can see it, I go online, I look at the print, I look at the size, I like it, I buy it. When you're doing the vintage stuff, some people want to hit that switch and make sure it still works, right? They want to wind it up to make sure the gears are still moving. How do you navigate that kind of stuff being on a social media platform or a website where somebody could only see a picture of it and they take your word for it that is in working condition? It's a little bit different, right? Because when you buy something online, you can go to Amazon and read all the descriptions of it. But when you collect something that's 75, 80 years old and it needs a little TLC, how do you, like, somebody in a store can appreciate what it is? But when you're online, unless you have 30 or 40 pictures for each item so that they could see everything, that's got to be a little bit difficult, right? So
it makes me nervous as I start tapping back into the online sales, because I worry, because for what you said, the stuff is vintage. It's 80, 90 years old. Like, what if it arrives and it's new in packaging, and even though I've taken the pictures to show, the packaging is yellowed, it's this, it's that. I do have a concern about that. One thing is if I, communicating with customers, we can do, FaceTime, Zoom. I can plug things in. I can show them stuff. I can do the best detailed pictures as possible. Unfortunately, like, if I sell something direct, I don't allow returns. We don't allow returns in the store either. But when it comes to selling on online sales channels, like Poshmark is the first one that I've opened up, I have to have that buyer guarantee where, if that they have a certain window where they can send it back. So there has to just be that trust, or hey, it's really cool, but you're going to need to rewire it. I have some of those things too. So I think that, as I find, as I'm handling it best, people understand that they're buying vintage. They understand that they're buying something old. They're not expecting to get that perfect in the box, item. And
because I look at it the opposite way, right? Like, I think if you went online, your skill as a salesman and your skill is your product knowledge is going to sell it, right? And I look at it as a whole different, I say, to use an online store and social media is fantastic because it reaches more of a platform and more of a group. So I always look at it as a positive. I know we talked about it before with you being a little bit nervous about it, but I really think that you're going to do well with that. And I really think the focus, for doing stuff online now is kind of, it's, I don't want to say it's the wave of the future because it kind of is the future, right? Like it's here and it's now. So I think, you've done a great job of embracing that, but I think it's going to work very well for you. to do that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And what's really great about doing the online sales and, like you said, using my salesmanship, I get to also earn passive income through it, because all of these platforms, when you monetize your page or YouTube offers to monetize you, you have all of these opportunities. So not only am I selling an item and generating an income from that, I'm gaining a passive income through streaming ads, through subscriptions, through people sending stars and bonuses and all of that stuff. So you're right. I can, the day we talked about this, you have just grounded my head so much. And I'm like, you really hyped me up, especially, I don't know how much you talk about your wife's business on here, if you keep them separate or not, but
I mention it because obviously, like, she sponsors all the stuff. So she gives me all the clothes to wear, which is awesome because
cool.
I like doing it. But yeah, it's been a unique thing because my podcast is new, right? But I've watched her grow for 7 years. So for her to transition from putting everything online and creating a web page and creating a Facebook and a business page in a group and now a forum, and now she opened up one of those things where it's like Facebook offers like a group chat, so anybody in the group can start talking about anything. And the focus was always the boutique, right? So doing the clothes, the accessories, and everything else that we had in our shop. But now it's networking, right? The clothes almost kind of take a back page to putting yourself in front of other people to talk about how I open, and I thought that was the great thing about, you mentioned about your podcast about helping people, right? Because if somebody had a question and said, listen, I have an idea of opening up a small store. Well, who would they know to ask, right? Unless you have expertise and knowledge into opening a store, you wouldn't know where to go, right? So if somebody came to you and said, hey, Shena, I want to open up a small store. What do you got for me? How do I do it? You can say, do this, 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 and this. Don't do this, this, and this. And now you've helped somebody kind of get a better head. And so that's kind of where my wife's especially mindset is now, is like, she'll have people that say, listen, I want to open my own boutique. What do I do? And so now she's kind of more of a coach into that aspect of it, to say, here, you need to start a web page, get all your product developed, put your money back into your store. Don't take an income at first. All the money you make, put it back into the business. And so now she's almost kind of taking a role as a coach, as just, her product sells itself, right? So but now it's she's selling herself, right? She's selling her knowledge, skills, and ability. So I think that's the biggest thing now, is like using social media as that platform to say, hey, listen, can I do what you did? And sometimes you have to be honest and say, I don't think you have it in you. You don't have the drive, you don't have the will, you don't have the but if you could see somebody's really passionate about doing it, you could say, listen, all that stuff is going to come, but you just have to focus on growing yourself and your business. And that's what, and so now, when my wife, she goes live on TikTok a lot, and she talks about that kind of stuff, right? So and so it's a unique kind of thing where it's like, before it was all about sell the clothes, and now 7 years later, it's sell yourself. You're selling you. And so
it is. It is definitely about branding yourself. And I always say that I don't think that it's so much the great inventory that I have in my store here that attracted people and brought them in. It was the smile, the friendly person, the, kind of out there lady on the corner downtown that, started to become more of the draw. And we more than ever live in the age of, with remote work and with all of the online, that branding yourself is a big deal. Like, you can do it, but you can rebrand yourself too. And I'm seeing people go through these transitions. They used to call them career makeovers, and now it's going with the tide and branding yourself. And you're absolutely right. And I've done a little bit of the opposite. I think that I've done pretty good branding myself. People who know me for a long time know what I'm about. But now I'm taking all of that and then stepping into the actual sales part of it, realizing that I've laid the foundation for what's to come. I have all of these online sales channels for the Grapevine Galleria that I started. And then when I was diagnosed with cancer in 2020, I stopped. And that I'm finally just opening them back up this year. I started the things like the podcast where, I can showcase, and I want to do a deep
Mm-hmm.
dive on what it was like being a business owner and overcoming these obstacles with health issues. And kind of through my whole journey, I have shared that with people. So I have the Sheena Strong Facebook page, and that started that, and the YouTube page started with a friend of mine was like, we really need to raise some funds for your cancer journey. And I have a background in fundraising. We utilized GoFundMe. We hopped on. We realized, even though we were a couple of old birds, that this stuff is important.
Sure.
Yeah, figured it out. And so really a lot of that, is being nurtured. And I really like it, and finding, and how timely, and hearing the day we talked, your wife's success story and your experience of going through it, that really influenced me on how can I still, not, how can I still create opportunities in small rural areas? I mean, stop the death of the small business. I'm hoping that, and I feel that we see so many of the major retailers shutting down. I'm really hoping that this brings us back to a closer sense of community where we are supporting more our mom
I
and
think it
pop
is.
shops.
And I think you're going to find in the next few months, you're going to start being a trendsetter in your community, because as you start looking at other places and other towns to maybe open up another shop, you're going to start, like I said, you're going to talk to the politicians, you're going to talk to the mayor, and you're going to say, listen, I want to open up this store and I want this to happen. And it's going to start turning the gears, because, you're in a very unique, position where you have product that recycles itself through the decades, right?
Mm-hmm.
The vintage car market is as strong now as it ever was, right?
Yes.
And so now cars from the 60s and 70s, are back popular, selling just as well as the new cars are, right? So it's a unique thing, because when you start looking products through the years and what comes in, you have basically a lifetime of product, right? So
Yes.
everything you've collected is a unique piece to your shop, but it's also a unique piece to culture and society. So it goes beyond and above just, walking into a store and buying something off the shelf, where your product tells a story, right?
It does.
So that's,
Yes.
so yeah, so you're going to be, like I said, you'll see yourself being a trendsetter in the next few years when you start opening, the next venture in your life, and you start talking about it. People are going to resonate with your story, because I know I did. That's, what intrigued me to reach out to you and ask, say, hey, listen, this is kind of cool. I saw some pictures. Tell me about it. And you did. And I was like, this is fantastic. So, I think, in the next coming months and years for you, that this is a brand new world, and it's gonna be great.
New adventures.
Exactly.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and I'm not looking at, the closure of the store here. So I'm going to watch this video later and be like, you picked the worst place possible. And I'm sure
You're fine.
I'm sure my professors from college are like, Sheena, you know better. But I'm not looking at this like, oh, I'm sad. I mean, there is some grieving, and,
Sure.
and it's really hard to see something that you built to have to reconstruct. But I've already have the bare bones. I've figured out the hard part. I created a brand and networked on social media. Like, I have really worked hard, even though I was sick, throughout all of these years. Up until this summer will be the first summer that I'm actually have more energy. I've laid some really good foundation, and I'm ready to run.
Yeah. And you know what? And the greatest thing about it too is that I always tell the story, is that when you look back at when you open your next store, right? And it's fantastic. And you'll look back and you'll be like, how did we manage to do that in this store for so long? Because when me and my wife, when we opened our first shop, it was in our garage at our old house. And we look back now and we're like, all those summers when it was 100 degrees in the garage and we're sweating, and we would go off camera and wipe ourselves down with towels, or in the wintertime, people are like, why do you guys stand so close together? Like, why do you because it's 30 degrees in a garage. We're freezing. We have a little space heater. We were cold. We were shivering. And like, we would wear layers upon layers upon layers, and then put a sweatshirt over it to go live, because we were so cold. It was like pulling off, and we did it. But now when we look back at it, we were like, how crazy was that? But those are such fun times. So when you move to your next adventure and you look back at this one, you're going to be like, wow, look at what we did. Like, this is kind of, so it's as one chapter closes, another one's going to open. And now you have a brand new book, page one.
It is. It is. It's getting through the next month. The last official day here at the store that I'll be open is May 28th. And it is June. I'm going to spend June. I have to catch up on doctor's appointments, and I'm going to sit down, reprioritize, figure out my next moves. I have a lot of opportunities and options. And so thank you for the encouragement.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's do this. So we're coming up on the hour. Well, first off, we'll let you pitch any socials you have. Tell us where we could find your podcast, where we could find you at, any social media pages you have. You can plug them now, and then I'll link them on the YouTube video when we're done. So tell everybody where we could find you.
Okay. Well, the place where I'm most active, just because I'm 49 years old, and so I fit that target range, is Facebook. I tend to utilize Facebook the most. I have my own page, Shena Collins. Shena with one E. My parents had to spell it like the Scottish and the Irish, not the American way. They had to be weird. So Shena with one E, Shena Collins on Facebook. I have my breast cancer advocacy, chronic illness, chronic pain advocacy page is Shena Strong. And you can, even if you hit hashtag Shena Collins, hashtag Shena Strong.
Sure.
I have a big head, so I don't mind hashtagging my own name. Like I do. I have a big head, but a good heart. But I know how to brand, and my background is in public relations. So you have to do this stuff. So Shena Strong, Shena Collins, Grapevine Galleria. That's the name of my retail store, what we've been focusing on mostly tonight. So Grapevine Galleria, that has a page. I also have a little coffee cup mug company that I started called manymugs.com. You can check out there. I'm available for voice actor sing work on Fiverr. So that's Fiverr, Fiverr.com/Shena Collins 930. You can check me out on there. I'm also on YouTube as Shena Strong, and that documents a lot of vlogging of my cancer journey. I'm on TikTok as Shena Strong, Instagram as Galleria Shena. So that focuses more on the store and the business thing and my personal life and not the illnesses. So I think I'm probably missing something, but
Perfect.
that's
no, I'll link them all on the YouTube, and then let's do
and Bantering Fool, the podcast. How could I forget that? We're on a podcast.
So what we'll do is, how about we'll set up a date sometime like mid-August, and we'll come back and we'll listen to everything that you have. We'll see what your journey's been like these few months, and we'll revisit this, and we'll have another conversation about how fantastic your new career is going with the store and the podcast and all the other stuff you're doing, and we'll check in with you.
Yes, this is definitely. And the other experience, it's like, I'm going to be 50 this year. So here I am 50 and starting all over. And
so that's chapter. A big party, right? That's a big one. So we'll celebrate the birthday as a milestone and the new chapter, right? The next book starts now.
It does. Here we go.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Shena, for being such a great guest. I appreciate you hopping on. We'll check back with you again. We'll do it like mid-August, and we'll see where you're at from there. And we'll talk all the wonderful success stories you got at that point.
I cannot wait to give you the update. So
awesome. Well, thank you so much, guys. And I'm One Fun Guy Podcast. You can find me on all platforms, here on Facebook, over on MySpace, YouTube, and on Instagram. I'm One Fun Guy Podcast. Just search for me and I'll show up. I just want to thank my guest Shena again for being fantastic. We'll check back with her in August, and I will be live next week. I just have to make sure my guest is lined up, but we'll be back next week. So Shena, thank you again for being such a great guest, and we'll catch up with you soon.
Thank you.
All right. Bye, guys.